Whittaker's antics.
The drama surrounding Ben Whittaker is unlike anything the world of boxing has seen in years. From the moment he burst onto the international stage, his very presence has sparked debate, ignited passions, and divided audiences. Some see him as a flamboyant showman who disrespects tradition, while others hail him as the sport's future, a man who brings both artistry and entertainment to a brutal craft. What cannot be denied is that every time Whittaker steps into the ring, something unforgettable happens. He doesn't just fight opponents, he humiliates them, toys with them, and then dismantles them with frightening precision, all while dancing and mocking in ways that make crowds roar in equal parts awe and outrage. This is the story of the dancing beast of British boxing, a man who turns violence into spectacle and spectacle into dominance. When Whittaker first drew international attention at the Tokyo Olympics, many thought he was just another young fighter, riding on talent and charisma. But what the world soon discovered was that this man had a unique blend of ruthlessness and theatricality, a showmanship that harkened back to the legendary Prince Naseem Hamed, but with its own sharp edge. By 2024, Whittaker had already crafted an aura, one that made him one of the most talked-about rising stars in the sport. With 5 professional wins to his name, 4 of them emphatic finishes, he had solidified his reputation as not just a boxer to watch but a spectacle to experience. The ring wasn't just a place for him to fight, it was his stage, his theater, and his opponents were unwilling coasters in a brutal performance. Take, for instance, his clash with Frenchman Ked Gradia. Gradia, a tough and determined fighter, believed he could expose Whittaker, punish the cocky Brit, and send him to the hospital for a reality check. But from the opening bell, Whittaker floated around the ring with impossible ease, his movement, almost mocking in itself, stinging Gradia like a bee every time he reached too far. Frustration built in the Frenchman until finally he lashed out with a desperate strike to the back of Whittaker's head. In that moment, Gradia made the biggest mistake of his career. That illegal blow was like striking a match. It ignited the fire in Whittaker's eyes. What followed was nothing short of a ritualistic dismantling. He danced, he taunted, and then he tore into Gradia with vicious precision. To the crowd, it felt as though they were watching not just a boxing match but a sacrifice. The Frenchman, left broken and humiliated as Whittaker celebrated with theatrical flair. The dancing beast had been unleashed, and there was no putting him back in his cage. But Whittaker's rise would not stop there. Soon came a battle for national pride, when he stepped into the ring against fellow Englishman Leon Williams. Billed as a duel for supremacy, as Whittaker cheekily declared. There was only room for one Big Ben in England. The fight quickly turned into a showcase of dominance. From the start, Whittaker pinned Williams to the ropes, cutting off the ring and battering him with combinations. Yet what made the performance so memorable wasn't just the beating, it was the manner in which Whittaker delivered it. He danced, he showboated, and even at one point appeared more interested in surveying the audience for his next opponent than the man struggling in front of him. The confidence was absolute, almost cruel. Williams swung wildly, desperate to land something, but he looked out of his depth, like a man drowning, while Whittaker waded casually through the waters. In the end, Whittaker walked away with a unanimous decision, a result that surprised no one but thrilled his fans and solidified the aura that surrounded him. 3 months later, a far more dangerous threat loomed on the horizon: Slovakian knockout artist Vladimir Beluski, ominously nicknamed Big Bad Vlad. Unlike Williams, Vlad carried real power in his fists, the kind that could end fights instantly. But Whittaker was unmoved. He entered the ring with his trademark swagger, and what followed was a complete dismantling of the Slovakian's reputation. For 3 rounds, Whittaker picked him apart, punishing him with relentless combinations and mocking gestures that enraged the crowd and demoralized his opponent. Beluski, desperate to save face, tried to act as though Whittaker's punches did not hurt. He puffed out his chest, shook his head, and smiled through the pain. But all he managed to do was trigger Whittaker's cruelest instincts. The Brit began to mimic Vlad's theatrics, copying his taunts, ridiculing him with every missed punch, and then cutting through his defenses with surgical precision. It was a masterclass in both skill and psychological warfare. Whittaker's fists became scalpels, carving through his opponent's body and spirit until nothing remained. By the 8th round, the referee had no choice but to step in and stop the carnage. Beluski's defiance had been punished with humiliation, and Whittaker had once again proven himself not only as a fighter but as an entertainer who understood how to bend the narrative of a fight to his will. He wasn't content with victory. He wanted to dominate, to mock, to make his opponents regret stepping into the ring with him. His journey next took him to Italy, where he faced the dangerous Stefano D'Andrea. This was expected to be a war, a bloody clash between 2 hungry fighters. Yet once again, Whittaker transformed the fight into his own performance. Reading D'Andrea like an open book, he slipped and dodged every attack with almost supernatural timing. At the same time, he peppered his opponent with sharp counters, turning D'Andrea's aggression into his undoing. By the 3rd round, the Italian's face was marked with swelling, and a devastating knockdown showed that Whittaker wasn't just playing, he was dismantling. From that moment on, D'Andrea was broken, his spirit stolen, and Whittaker simply applied pressure, until the inevitable surrender came. Another fight, another opponent humiliated, another audience stunned. Then came Birmingham, May 6, 2023, where thousands of fans gathered to watch Whittaker clash with Scotland's Jordan Grant, known as the Game. Whittaker, always keen to make a statement, entered the arena draped in the skin of a cheetah, embodying the predator he intended to be that night. The fight was almost cruel in its inevitability. Whittaker dodged Grant's punches with ease, each miss adding to the frustration of the Scottish fighter. Meanwhile, his counters landed with frightening accuracy, rocking Grant again and again. The punishment became visible as Grant's face swelled with a massive hematoma, a mark of the gulf in class between them. Then, in a chilling display of arrogance, Whittaker stood still at one point, daring Grant to hit him. Grant failed, and the crowd erupted. Soon after, the knockdown came, and Grant's career was split into a before and after. The towel was thrown. The fight stopped, and Whittaker once again left the ring, not just victorious but celebrated as a performer, a man who could turn violence into choreography. But all of this had started earlier. In 2022, when Whittaker made his professional debut against fellow Englishman Greg O'Neill. O'Neill, who styled himself the real deal, dreamed of glory, but what he ran into was the beginning of a phenomenon. From the opening moments, Whittaker showcased the speed, timing, and swagger that would define his career. He rocked O'Neill with blistering combinations, then toyed with him, testing both his physical limits and his mental resolve. It was during this fight that the crowd witnessed for the first time the birth of the dancing beast, Whittaker. Showboating was electric, his confidence infectious, and when the knockout came, it was as emphatic as it was inevitable. O'Neill crumbled, and Whittaker stood tall, announcing to the world that a new star had arrived. Since then, his legend has only grown. He has danced, mocked, and destroyed his way through the early stages of his career, captivating fans and infuriating critics. To some, he is the savior of boxing entertainment, a man who can bring eyes back to the sport in an era where personalities matter as much as punches. To others, he is a dangerous distraction, a man who risks turning boxing into a circus act, yet whether you love him or hate him, you cannot ignore him. Every fight is a story, every victory a performance, and every opponent a prop in the theater of Ben Whittaker's rise. And now, the question lingers. Will he continue this ascent, growing into a true legend of the sport, or will his act burn out, dismissed as nothing more than flashy showboating? Time, as always in boxing, will provide the answer. But for now, what remains undeniable is that Ben Whittaker is a force of nature, a dancing beast whose shocking knockouts and mocking style have made him one of the most polarizing and fascinating fighters of his generation. So what do you think? Will Ben Whittaker's style carry him to greatness? Or will the show one day collapse under the weight of expectation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a real debate. And if you enjoyed reliving these shocking knockouts and unforgettable performances, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we continue to uncover the stories behind boxing's most dramatic warriors.